kingdom died in a single night, and the one who caused it was a witch in love. The kingdom of Eldros was not undone by armies, nor withered by famine or plague. It fell to ruin, brought down by a single forbidden love. Deep within its frost-bitten forests, where the snow clung to ancient pines like a shroud, lived Mira, a witch exiled for her allegiance to magic older than the kingdom itself. She had sought only the quiet solitude of the wilderness, a sanctuary from a world that had taught its people to fear what they could not understand. Her days were spent in the hushed company of towering trees and whispered incantations, a life hidden from the prying eyes of men and their laws. But fate, indifferent to the walls we build around our lives, arrived one freezing night in the form of a bleeding man, collapsed and broken at her doorstep. His ornate armor was gashed and splintered, and his breath came in shallow, faltering clouds against the frigid air. Without a moment of hesitation, Mira knelt beside him, placing her hands upon his chest. She let her forbidden power, a current of ancient life, weave through his shattered body, mending bone and knitting flesh. In that moment of compassion, she did not know she was saving Prince Aaron, the sole heir to the throne of Eldros, the very kingdom that had cast her out. Aaron awoke to the gentle dance of firelight flickering across the cabin, rough-hewn walls, and the comforting, earthy scent of drying herbs. His first instinct was suspicion, his gaze sharp and cautious as it fell upon the woman who moved silently by the hearth. He was a prince, raised on tales of wicked sorceresses and dark enchantments, taught since childhood to fear the very power that had just saved his life. But as the days bled into one another and the long, cold nights deepened, he began to see beyond the shadows of those legends. He saw not a monster, but Mira. She spoke rarely, her words chosen with care, yet her silence was not empty. It held a warmth that belied the perpetual winter outside. He began to ask questions, his curiosity chipping away at the fortress of his prejudice, and she answered with a guarded honesty that intrigued him more than any grand pronouncement. What began as a wary obligation soon softened into a quiet companionship, a shared space carved out of the world's harshness. In time, that companionship kindled into a slow burning affection, a dangerous and delicate flame. Their burgeoning love was a treasonous secret, a violation of the most sacred laws. Royals were expressly forbidden from any association with magic, their bloodline considered sacred and pure. Witches, in turn, were forbidden from ever touching that noble blood, a crime punishable by fire and death. But forbidden things often hold the most potent allure, a sweetness sharpened by the very danger they present. Soon, their hands lingered for a breath too long when passing a cup of tea. Their glances held for a moment longer than they should have, speaking a language that needed no words. In the heart of that isolated, snow-dusted forest, love took root in the last place it ever should have, a fragile bloom in cursed soil. Yet the ancient forest itself seemed to sense their unsanctioned bond. The very air grew heavy with an unspoken tension, a watchfulness that prickled the skin. One night, Mira was torn from sleep by the violent flaring of her candles. The flames bent sideways, guttering and twisting as if caught in the grip of an invisible, spectral storm. From the deepest shadows of her small cabin, a figure began to coalesce, tall, skeletal, and draped in tatters of darkness. It was the Shadow Herald, an emissary of the old gods who had long slumbered beneath the earth. Its hollow eyes, like vacant abysses, stared through her soul as it spoke, its voice a dry whisper, like dead leaves skittering across stone. His destiny is not yours to claim. Break this bond, or the kingdom will bleed for your defiance. A profound, bone-deep terror seized Mira. She had always revered and feared the power of the old gods, the primeval forces that governed the world long before kings and their laws. But the fear of losing Aaron was a sharper, more immediate pain. When the spirit dissolved back into the encroaching darkness, the physical cold left her bones, but a far deeper chill settled irrevocably into her heart. Driven by a desperation that bordered on madness, Mira sought out a place of forgotten power, a site whispered about only in the most hushed and fearful of legends, the ancient altar hidden in a lightless grove deep beneath the Eldros forest. It was a place of impossible desires and unthinkable costs. Kneeling upon the frozen, moss-covered stone, surrounded by the oppressive silence of the deep woods, she raised her voice in a desperate plea to the old gods. She begged them to protect her love, to shield him from the cruelties of fate and politics. "Let him live," she prayed, her voice trembling but resolute. "Let him become king. Let us be together." As her words echoed in the frigid air, shadows coiled around her arms like living, serpentine tendrils, cold and possessive. A disembodied voice, ancient and vast, answered her from the oppressive darkness, its tone resonating not in her ears but in the very fabric of her soul. "Love shall be yours, and ruin shall be his." In her blind, frantic hope, she failed to grasp the terrifying duality of the promise. She should have. The curse descended upon Eldros with the first light of dawn. It was not a sudden cataclysm, but a slow creeping rot that poisoned the kingdom from within. Fields of golden wheat blackened overnight, their stalks turning brittle and foul. The rain, when it fell, was no longer life-giving. It was thick and dark as tar, choking the rivers and turning the soil barren. Children were born silent, their cries absent, their eyes vacant. The kingdom's bravest warriors, men who had faced down armies without flinching, descended into madness, their minds fractured by spectral whispers that called them into the ever-deepening shadows. As the people of Eldros suffered and starved, as hope withered and died, one terrible truth became unavoidable. The calamities had begun on the very night Mira made her pact at the hidden altar, when a hollowed-eyed and grief-stricken Aaron finally discovered what she had done. Piecing together the grim timeline, he confronted her in the skeletal ruins of an old temple. "You tried to save us," he said, his voice cracking under the weight of his kingdom's agony, "and you have doomed us all instead." Mira's tears, hot and futile, fell to the cold stone floor, disappearing into the cracks. "I couldn't lose you," she whispered, her own voice a fragile thread. He looked at her, the love in his eyes warring with an unbearable sorrow. "You should have," he replied softly, and the words, spoken without anger, cut her more deeply than any blade ever could. Determined to undo the cataclysm she had unleashed, to end the suffering that was a direct consequence of her selfish love, Mira returned alone to the altar. The shadows in the grove seemed to writhe in anticipation, hungry and waiting. This time, there were no pleas, no bargains. Her voice was steady, stripped of all hope, but filled with a final heartbreaking resolve as she offered the only thing of value the old gods had ever truly wanted, herself. "Take me," she whispered to the oppressive darkness, her voice barely disturbing the dead air. "End the curse." The shadows roared in triumphant acceptance. In an instant, she was consumed, her life devoured in searing spirals of smoke and a blinding, silent flash of light. Miles away, across the blighted kingdom, the sun broke through the foul clouds for the first time in months. The tar-like rain ceased. A collective sigh of relief seemed to pass through the land. But in his castle, Prince Aaron felt her vanish from the world like a breath of cold winter air, an abrupt and absolute emptiness in his soul. He never loved again. Eldros healed, its fields slowly turning green again, its people slowly forgetting the darkness that had nearly consumed them. But its prince never did. Every night, Aaron wandered the edges of the forest, a single lantern in his hand, its lonely light a small defiance against the overwhelming dark. He was searching for something he knew he would never find, a ghost, a memory, a trace of the woman who had sacrificed everything for a love that destroyed a kingdom to save a man. Some nights, when the wind sighed through the skeletal branches of the ancient trees, he swore he could hear her voice carried on the breeze, a faint, sorrowful whisper. Some nights, at the edge of his vision, where the mist clung to the forest floor, he swore he could see her silhouette, a fleeting shape of a woman fading back into the shadows. Love can heal a broken heart, or it can end a kingdom.